Hello everyone, and thanks for joining me again for this new video. Today we will finish building our portfolio website. This is the third and last video in a series of 3. If you missed the previous one, you will find the links in the description. And as a reminder, we will use bricks, we will use Metabox for managing custom fields and custom post types, and we will use Oxyprops to style everything. So before we jump into it, let's have a quick view at where we are now and what we want to achieve. So up to now, we have built 4 sections. This is the hero section we built in the first video with those moving shapes around the image and this typewriter effect created with the JavaScript library. This simple about section. In the second video, we did create this work experience sections with the work experience cards. Everything is pulled from custom post types through relationships created with Metabox. We also have this horizontal scrolling container with cards snapping in the center. And then we created this skills section, once again pulled from custom post types and custom fields, with this reveal of the current proficiency on hover. So now we have to build the project section when you can showcase everything you build for client. So the layout of this section is similar to the one in the work experience with the horizontal scrolling, except that instead of having small cards, in the project sections, the card is full screen and each screen showcases a project. Once again, information are pulled from custom post types and custom fields through relationships. And finally, we will build a contact section. We will use bricks built-in form builder to create this contact form, and we will style it with Oxyprops. So let's start and jump into bricks. This is our current state. We have our app container. Remember, we need this app container to contain the whole page and create our scroll snap effect, the vertical one for each section. And inside this global app container, we have the 4 sections we already created. So let's jump to the skills sections. The last one, we will duplicate it. This will be our project section. And let's delete this grid and our basic text. Okay, and change this heading to project. So now we have a clean slate to start with, except that by duplicating our section, we already have the basic structure in place with the full height class, the snap center class. Remember, this class is applied at the child element level, so that's the class that tells this section container to snap in the center in the vertical snap scrolling app container. So first, I want a band of color across my section. So let's create this, and to the section, we will insert a div. And this div will be absolutely positioned. So let's give it a position of absolute. Now it disappeared, and this is because you know that when something is positioned absolute, you need to tell it relative to which element it will be positioned absolute. So we need to go to our section and give it a position of relative, because an absolutely positioned element is positioned absolutely relative to its closest ancestor with a position of relative. So we gave a position relative to the section. So now our div is back and is positioned absolutely relative to the section. Okay, so now let's give it a bit of styling. So first I will give it a background so we can see it. And I want to give it a color of surface 3. But I don't want to use my neutral canvas color. I want to use my brand color. So let's tweak it. It will be a surface 3 dash brand. Okay, let's go to the layout section and we will give it a width of 100 Vmax. And remember, Vmax is a specific unit that will use always the biggest, the largest of your screen width or your screen height, depending on your screen aspect ratio. And let's also give it a height of 50, and this time I will use Vmin. That will be the minimum of the screen dimension. So as I am on a desktop, 100 Vmax means 100 viewport width, and 50 Vmin means 50% of the viewport height. On a mobile phone, for example, with a portrait orientation, it would be the opposite. Vmax would be the viewport height, and Vmin would be the viewport width. Okay, so now we have our band with the correct dimensions and the correct background color. Let's give it a transform because I want to give it an angle across my section. So let's create a transform of Skew, and we will use Skew over the y-axis with an angle of -15. And this distorted our div with this angle. Perfect, so we are okay with our background. Let's come back to our container and make a few adjustments because my standard container is centered into the section and I want this one to extend to the bottom of the section. So making sure I'm at the ID level, let's go to layout, change the height to 91.66 VH. So now the dimension is correct, but it is still centered in my section. That's not what I want. So let's go back to the section, and my section will not be centered. So I need to position my div. My div will be 25%. Here it is from the top, and my section will be a flex column with the items on the cross-axis centered, and on the main axis I want to push everything at the bottom of the section, so it will be at the end of the flex main axis, which is the vertical axis. Okay, so now you can see that my container here was pushed at the bottom of my section. And so for the container dimension of 91.66, if you do the calculation, previously it was centered and it was 83.33. I just wanted to add the small portion here to my container height so it extends to the bottom of the section without modifying the position of the top. And if you do the calculation, you will find that when adding this portion, the height is now 91.66 VH. So now inside this container, I want another container that will be the container for my project. So I insert a div. And by the way, I receive questions about some of the utility classes not working as expected with some container. And you notice that I use a div. A div was added recently to Bricks, and the interest of using a div is that in Bricks, divs have no styles applied by default by the builder. If you use a block, for example, Bricks by default will add a display flex to your block element. And then if you want to turn it into a grid, you have to fight against Bricks default styling with selectors with higher specificity in order to have your display grid override the display flex, which is the default. And it's never a good idea to fight with specificity and to add higher specificity and higher specificity or even the important keyword to your CSS. So when you want to build your own design, I would highly recommend to use elements that has as few predefined styles as possible. That's why you often see me using divs, because divs have no style at all and I can do what I want. So this being said, I now have this div, and this will be my project's grid. And first I will position it absolutely. It will have a width of 100 viewport width. So it will be full viewport width. The maximum width, you see it's grayed out. It's 100% applied by default by bricks to elements. So I want to override this default. So I will unset it. So I use CSS keywords, unset. And now you can see that my grid extends over its parent container limits. That's what I want. I want it to be 100 VW, sorry. So I want it to be actually full width of my screen. Don't want it to be limited by my site boxed style. And I will give it a height of 83. Actually, that's 83.3 VH. So here it is. Once again, I want to push it to the bottom of my container. So let's go to my container and make sure that on the main axis, the vertical one, because I'm in a flex column, I want on the main axis my items to be pushed at the end. So O-flex-n. And this one is my grid container. Inside this container, I will have my project card with a horizontal scroll. So let's make sure that we have our scroll bar visible with this class overflow-x-scroll. I also want snapping, and snapping will be in the inline direction. So let's find the class snap inline, and I want it to be mandatory. So I will select the slap-inline-mandatory. I want to define my custom scroll bar. So let's add the basic O-scroll bar class. And I want my scroll bar to be my brand color, the same as the vertical one. So let's add the class scroll bar-brand. And if you remember from the previous video, we are using a grid, but we don't want our elements to stack on top of each other. We want them to be side by side horizontally. And for this, we have to change the natural flow of the CSS grid. And we want to give it a grid auto flow property of column. And we do this with the class of O-grid-flow-column. And last thing, at my project grid level, is that I want to give it some spacing, and I will give it a padding block. So what is padding block? It's a CSS, it's a utility class, of course, but it uses a CSS logical property of padding block. Padding block adapts to the user language specificities, and in my case, I'm using English, which is a left to right languages, but it would be the same with the right to left language. Like Arabic, for example, padding block will be equivalent to top and bottom. It's padding along the block axis, top down. If I was using Chinese, for example, which is a vertical language, the padding block will be equivalent to left, right. Okay, so it's interesting to use these logical properties because they will adapt to your website visitor. So let's choose a padding block of 6, and we should be good with our project grid settings. Let's save. And now inside my project grid, let's add a new div. And this div will use the bricks query loop, and this will be my project loop. And let's make sure that we use the query loop on this one. But now, of course, before setting the query, we need to create the project custom post type. So let's jump into our WordPress dashboard, MetaBox, post types. And we will create a new post type. And this will be our project. Singular will be project. The slug is okay. Labels are okay. Let's choose, for example, this icon. I don't want to enable the editor. I want to use the thumbnails to insert a project image. And I want to make sure that I enable the page attributes. This is for relationships to work properly. Let's publish. And we have our new post type project. Let's go to MetaBox relationships and create a new relationship that will link a project to a skill. This is not a reciprocal relationship. Reciprocal relationships are used if I want to link to items of the same nature. So make sure you leave this checkbox unchecked, otherwise your relationship will not work. So I want to link from a post, which will be my project. And as an empty message, let's add no related skill. And I want to link to a skill. And as the empty message, let's add no related project. Okay. On the MetaBox. So once again, make sure you're not confused by the term MetaBox here. MetaBox doesn't relate to the plugin name, MetaBox, even if it is the same name. It really means a MetaBox, what actually is a MetaBox. And a MetaBox is, for example, this box here is in my sidebar. This is a MetaBox. So with this tab here, MetaBox, you will configure the appearance of the relationship MetaBox in your custom post type. So I want to give it a title of related skills. Here you can define where you want the MetaBox positioned. I want it to be in my sidebar, but you could decide to have it after content. The priority will define the position, and I will use the default WordPress style for a MetaBox. And on my skill post type, I want also a title for my MetaBox that will be related project, and everything else is okay. For the field itself, we don't need to fill anything specific in all those fields. So let's publish. And now if I go to my project and create a new one to showcase a beautiful brochure website that I did create for a customer, for example, you know that I have my relations MetaBox. So this is the MetaBox I was talking about, appearing here with the title we just defined, which is the related skills. Okay, so now you can see what the MetaBox tab in the relationship creation form MetaBox tab is for. We did define a title for our MetaBox, and this is the title that appears here for the relationship MetaBox on our custom post type creation page. And now I can add skills to this specific project. I built it with bricks, Oxyprops, and WordPress, for example. Let's publish. Okay, so now we have a custom post type with a title, relationships, but we have no content for this custom post type. So we need to create custom fields for our project. So let's go back to MetaBox, custom fields, and we will create a new group that will be our project fields. As always, before I forgot, because I have a tendency to forget, let's set right now the post type that we want this fields group to apply to, and it will be our project. Back to my fields. I don't need to set a title for the project because I will use the post title for that. But let's add a text field. That will be my client. Let's add a text area. And that will be my project summary. And let's add a group. This will be my key points. It will be a clonable group. It will also be sortable. And inside my key points, I want a text field that will be my key point, singular. Okay, I think we're good. Let's publish. Back to our projects, edit our beautiful brochure website. So for example, this one was for Joe Plumbing Services. Let's add a summary and a few key points to our project. Let's update this one. And certainly I forgot an important field. So let's add it right now. Custom fields, my project fields, edit, and let's add a URL, which will be a URL to the live site. Update. And let's add a URL. Okay, so now I have one project. Let me create a few more off camera so we have material to work with. And let's meet again in Bricks when I'm done with that. Okay, so now I have a few projects. Let's go back to Bricks. So if I jump into the query, I will not find my project post type because first I need to reload Bricks so it is aware of the changes. So let's save, reload, and back to my projects loop. To the query, now I should be able to find my projects. Here they are. And I want my card to have a width of 100 viewport width. I want it to be a flex column. I want the items along the cross axis to align to the center. I want it to snap when scrolling. So it will be a snap center. Remember, this one is at the element level, and previously we defined the behavior at the container level. And I will add a gap of 4. You certainly notice, because we don't see any content yet, but Bricks did pull our 5 projects through the project loop. So now we have the horizontal scroll bar that did appear. So I can scroll along my 5 items and you see the scroll bar, the custom scroll bar at the bottom. And by the way, just to remind you, because I think I told about it in the first video, the custom scroll bar uses specific CSS properties that apply to WebKit-based browsers. So currently I'm using Chrome, it works. It will also work in WebKit-based browsers like Safari, like Opera. But for example, the custom styles for the scroll bar will not work with Firefox that is not WebKit-based. You will have the horizontal scroll, but you will not have the custom colors for the scroll bar. So now that we have our structure in place, let's add some content. So first I will add a container that will contain my project thumbnail image and the skills associated with it. So let's insert a div. This will be my top grid. I use the term grid, but actually this will be a flex row. Let's add a gap of 4. And we will add an image. This image will be my post thumbnail. So let's use dynamic data. And this will be the featured image. And I will use the full size. I did make sure that my image size are correct for the use case. But I want to make sure that they will all look the same. So let's go to our style and give it a width of size 15. I will use a radius of 2 and I will give it an aspect ratio of widescreen. Perfect. Now let's add another container to my top grid. This will be my skills row. And inside of it, I will have another one that will be my skills loop. This will use the query loop. We will query the project skill relationship. This will be a grid container. It will be a grid 3 with a gap of 2. And let's add an image. And my image will be dynamic data and will be my featured image. But this time, because we are pulling it for the relationship, this will be the related skill featured image. Let's use a small one. Bricks is not showing us anything yet, so just to be sure, let's have a look at the front end, refresh, and here we have our images. Back to Bricks, I will refresh, and my image will be round. I will also give it a width of 8. Okay, and now of course my layout is not correct because I did not apply my class at the correct level. So let's go back. Sure, I did apply it on the loop container. I must apply it at the skill row level. So this one is a grid 3. with a gap of 4. Let's check again. And now it's correct. While we are here, let's also fix something. You will notice from our main nav that if I click, it doesn't work. That's because I need to set the proper ID to my section. So back in Bricks, let's make sure that our sections have the proper ID. So this one is projects. This one is skills. This one is experience. And this one is already about. Save. And now our nav should work and it's perfect. Okay. So maybe we can use the area we have just below our skills to add the project key items. So let's wrap our skill row with a div. Inside this div, we will have another div that will be our key items. This div container is a flex column with on the cross axis the items at the start and on the main axis with a space between. Okay, so now here is my key items div, and this one will also be a flex column with my items at the start, also on the cross axis. And this will use the query loop. And we will use this time a metabox group. It will be my key points. And inside of it, let's add a basic text. And this basic text will use my metabox project key point from the key points. Let's save. So Bricks still has troubles refreshing our custom fields, but let's check on the front end. And here we get our key points pulled from the clonable group. So maybe to give it a better look, we can add an icon. In this case, my key items will not be a flex column, but it will be a flex row. The icon will be at the start. Let's select a check mark, give it my accent color, a size of size 5. My flex row will have items centered on the cross axis, and it will also have a gap of 2. I think my icon is a bit too big. Let's go for a size 4, which is better. Let's save. And I want to wrap my key items in a div. That will be my items column. And this will be a flex column with my items at the start. Let's save and have a look. And that's perfect. Maybe we can just add a little gap. Gap of 1. And I will also add a text at the top. That will be the project key items. Let's give it a font size of 1. Check our front end, and that's perfect. So now we need to add a title for the project and the summary just below. So back in Bricks, and still in our project loop, let's add a heading and a basic text. We will give our heading a dynamic content, but first a text that will be common on all projects. It will be case study. And then let's grab the post title. Okay. And our text, let's get the project summary. And our project summary will have a maximum width of content 3. And it will also be a font size 1. And the text will be left aligned. Just before I noticed that I didn't grab the correct dynamic content. This is the post modified. That's not what I want, of course. Obviously, I want my post summary, my project summary. That's much better. So let's save this one. Check our front end, project. And here we are with our project card. And when we are here, just a remark, we are not viewing the custom scroll bar at the bottom. And this is because I'm logged in as an admin, and WordPress adds the admin bar at the top that uses part of my viewport. So it pushes the scroll bar outside of the visible screen. But if we visit the page in an incognito window like this one, the admin bar is gone. And let's go to our project section, and the scroll bar is now visible at the bottom. Okay, so we have our project showcase section that is close to complete. The image is the custom post type thumbnails. We are pulling the skills from the relationship, the key items from a clonable group. We have our post title, our post summary, and the last thing we need to add is a link to the site. So maybe we can make the whole screen clickable. Back in our project, let's grab the project loop itself and make it a link. And it will be a link to an external URL. We will get the URL through a dynamic data. This will be my project live site. Let's give it a relation of no opener, no referrer, no follow. We want it to open in a new tab because we don't want our visitor to leave the website. Let's save. And now our project section is finished. And the whole thing is a link to the live site. So of course, for the example, I did link to the Google website, but you can link it to whatever URL you want from your live site custom field. So now our project section is finished. Let's work on the last one. And this will be our contact section. Back in Bricks, I will duplicate my skills section. And let's name it our contact section. Let's do a bit of cleanup. I'll remove this. I'll remove my basic text. And my heading content will be contact. So in my container, I will add a basic text. The content will be, I have what you need. Let's talk. It will be a font size 4 with a font weight of 700. And as you know, we saw already this in a previous video. In Bricks, things are different than in Oxygen. You know that in Oxygen, you can select part of your text and then you have access to additional options. You can create spans and assign class. That's not possible in Bricks, but you can write HTML directly in your content field. And for example, we can add a span with a class of O-_brand. And I want to properly close my span. And now this allows me to style part of my text. Okay, so now let's add a new div. And this will be my coordinates. And if we want to take care of our semantics, as this container will contain phone number, email, and address, we can give it the proper tag of address. This is the proper semantics for a container that contains contact coordinates on your page. This will be a flex column with a gap of 2. And inside of it, I will create a div. This will be a contact item. It will be a flex row. I want my items on the cross axis to be centered. So that's vertically centered. And I want a gap of 1. Inside of it, I will have an icon and the text. My icon, this one will be this headset. It will have a color of brand with an opacity of 60%, a size of 5, and a class of blink. My text will be my phone number. So for this, if we plan on using the company phone number, email address, street address on many places of our website, we could have created a settings page with Metabox, with custom fields, and then pull dynamically this data from the custom field. In this video, I will not create the setting page. I will hardcode my phone number in the field, but in a real life build, maybe you want to create a setting page and pull data from this setting page to make your site more maintainable. So I will duplicate this one 2 times. The second one will be this envelope. And let's change this to oxyprops.com. And the last one will be this map marker. And the text will be a street address. So now let's actually build our form. I will insert a div. So if needed, I can have control over the positioning. And inside of it, add a form. And now we have Bricks blueprint to create our form. So we have our name, email, message. I want to add an additional field that will be our subject, and the placeholder will be subject. And let's move it over our message. Perfect. I want my name and my email to be side by side. So let's open the name field, change the placeholder to simply name, and I want the width to be 49%. And let's do the same for the email. With a width of 49%. Now they are side by side. It's not yet the perfect layout because as you see, there's available space on the right. They are touching each other. I would like this available space to be in the middle, but we will take care of this a bit later. For now, let's continue and take care of our placeholder typography. And I want the placeholder color to be my text 2 with an opacity of 40%. Okay? Before I forget, let's change the message placeholder to simply message. Okay, so we are good for our fields and the placeholder. Let's go to the layout. And I want to add some padding. I will add a size 2 on top and bottom. On left and right, I will add a size fluid 2. The alignment will be space between, and this is how we will move this available space in between the two fields. Here we are. So if you remember, that's similar to what we are doing with our Flexbox utility classes when we are setting a flex between utility class. My field's background color will be my surface 3. Perfect. I don't want these borders, so let's change the borders. The style will be none, and I want to match the radius with my site, so I used a radius 2. So I will do the same here with a var of radius 2. So we are done with our fields. Let's take care of the submit button. My text will be submit. The size will be extra large. I want a width of 100%. I want the text color to be my surface 1. And I want my border radius to match the rest. So radius 2. Perfect. I will leave the default for action, but make sure that you fill those fields with all relevant information in your case. And the last thing I want to make is limit the width of my form. So I will go to my container and give it a maximum width of content 2. And here is my contact section. Let's save. And here is our contact section with this very nice bricks integrated contact form. So let's give it a try. And perfect. The form was submitted. And just for the final touch, we probably want the get in touch element in our header to link to this contact section. So let's do it. So let's go and edit our header template. Here we are on our contact row, and we want to make this a link, and this will link to our contact section. And so in the editor, we just need to make sure that our contact section has the correct ID. So let's change it to contact, save. And we will have a look in an incognito window to make sure we don't have this admin bar. The get in touch link should take us to the contact section, which is the case. So let's have a look at our finished page. Our header, perfect. Light and dark modes. Our navigation that takes us to the relevant section. So first let's go to the about section. Perfect. The next one is our work experience. Perfect. Our skills. Our project. And finally, our contact section. And this brings this series to an end. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel for others videos like this one. I wish you a lot of incredible website builds, and I see you in the next video.